In less than 24 hours, Jermaine called us. We gave him the tape and a phone number where we were.
Okay.
In less than 24 hours, Jermaine called us and said, I like your tape. What do you want? Well, we want a deal. Of course. He says, well, right now I'm at the hospital with Hazel, but maybe we can meet. And then he decided, he said, hey, it's in Hollywood. If you guys are in Hollywood, maybe you can come over here and hang out with me and we can talk. Well, we got on the bus and went exactly where he was. Now, here is an amazing story, man. Let me tell you this, Nnamdi. We're there talking to Jermaine. We're hanging with him. Hazel's in labor. And we're talking to Jermaine. We're talking to Jermaine in the waiting room for a good hour. Maybe an hour, 15 minutes pass. And then who should walk in but Mrs. Jackson, LaToya, Reby, and Janet. Jermaine introduces us to his family. They welcome us like family. We all get to talking and hanging for another half hour, 45 minutes. Then who should walk in that door but Michael, Randy, Marlon, and Jackie. So we're surrounded by the Jacksons, and they're treating us weak. So we meet everybody, and they're treating us like family.
Hey guys, want to welcome you to another edition of Halftime Chat. And enjoying the fact I'm going back to the old logo, must be the music, because I think it captures the core of what Halftime Chat was about, really focusing on the journey and the music. And so I'm really excited to speak to the legendary Gregory Williams, the founder of the group Switch. And for most of us, we're aware of Switch when they had There'll Never Be, I Call Your Name, Best Beat in Town, but at the time fronted by the late Bobby DeBarge. And so we're going to talk about how they got discovered by Jermaine Jackson, signed to Motown, and a lot. So I hope you enjoy the journey. And yes, we'll talk to Gregory. Okay.
There we go. Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Gregory, it is definitely an honor that you've taken time out this evening to join us on Halftime Chat. I've spent the last 5 years really celebrating a lot of the journey of our favorite artists, and especially a group like yourselves, Switch, which has been has left a lasting and legacy with our community. And the fact that you guys are still on the road is an amazing tribute as well to the longevity and the love for the music. So it's going to be great talking to you and hearing about your journey and your story.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure, and I thank you very much for having me on.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Well, thank you. Well, we've got an international audience, and I always like to start off by asking where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and
Okay.
I came up 186 miles away from Chicago and 186 miles from Detroit. So I was in the middle of two music meccas. But where I was, it was like piping in sunlight to get good R&B music. But Grand Rapids, there it is, right there in the middle of it all.
Growing up, what was it like growing up then for you? I mean, were you into music, or was it football, basketball? I mean, what was it
Oh,
like?
my entire life. My entire life, man. I mean, my very first performance, I was 5 years old in a kindergarten
Wow.
play. I was surrounded by it. My dad was a saxophonist who primarily focused on jazz. My mom was a singer, and she was exclusively in the church groups and stuff like that. She might
Okay.
do a little secular around the house while we're cleaning up and things like that, but she would only sing publicly for the church when she did. So,
Okay.
and she came from a family of 13.
Wow.
Actually, yeah, yeah. And all of her siblings, except the last two who were younger than me, all of them played music, sang and played music. So I grew up around that and that musical influence.
Wow. Before going on, when you talk about your mom being a child of 13, what was the family like that families were having children, that many children, and supporting? I mean, because with I'm thinking about where we are now, where you have lots of single mothers and stuff. What was the community, black community, like in from what you can remember?
Well, yeah, in Grand Rapids, well, for the most part, at that time, families were having big families. We grew up around the corner from there was quite a few families with 8, 9, 10 children, but
Wow.
around the corner from us, there's a family called the Belchers, and there was 17 kids. So
Woo-hoo.
imagine that. But
Wow.
yeah, so that was part of it. Now, strangely enough, my mom only had 5 of us.
She said only. That's,
Yeah, she only had 5 of us. Well, by comparison, I mean, I'm growing up against these football teams and stuff. So.
wow.
And actually, my mom was a young mom when I was born. She was 19 years old.
Wow.
So I grew up with her siblings as my brothers and sisters as well.
Wow.
And again, as I said, all of them sang and all of them played instruments. So all this teaching and all this musical influence was a part of my coming up. So I didn't know that my personality said yes, but I had opportunity and was asked to sing in a Christmas play, and I did. And from that point on, the bug had bit me. That's what I was going to do my entire life.
So growing up then, did you navigate towards the singing or when did the different instruments that you're known to
At
play?
7 years old, I picked up the trumpet. My dad and I had talked about it because I wanted to do what he did.
Oh,
He told me to tell the teachers in class when it came to music class, tell them I wanted to play the clarinet. Well, I didn't get that clear, and so I wound up playing the cornet. When he said cornet, I said yes, and so I took it, thinking that it was going to get me to the saxophone, not knowing it was actually taking me to the trumpet. But once I had it, and I was working with it, and I was learning it. So I wound up being a trumpet player.
what about the singing? Did you stop? Did that stop then or?
Oh God, always, man. I mean, even before kindergarten, I was singing. The whole family sang, so that's what we
Okay.
did. In fact,
Okay.
in my autobiography, I talk about me being 3, 4 years old, and me and my cousin Squeaky, who was a few months younger than me, singing in the closet as little bitty kids. So yeah.
What was it like? Because as we progress with your music career, I guess those of us who are international are very much aware of how segregated America was back in those days, and we've seen the Temptations and Motown how they sometimes struggled with segregation when they played in the South. In Michigan, what was that like growing up in America then?
Well, let's say more exclusively Grand Rapids, because
Yeah.
Grand Rapids, to be honest with you, even now reminds me of what I've learned about apartheid.
Wow.
Still a very racist town. Still very as you stay over there and don't come over here.
Wow.
That's why, I mean, even now, I live in Georgia, but I spent I've been here about 5 years, a little over 5 years. Prior to that, I spent roughly 40 years in California. When it was time for me to make a change from California, it was a question of coming to Georgia or going to Grand Rapids, but the question went away real quick because I refused to go someplace where anyone wants to treat me like I'm less than. And
Even
in
to
Grand
today.
Rapids, I found that to be the case with Black people. They treat you like you're less than, blatantly. Now here and it probably surprised you. Well, how could you go to the South? Well, I went to the South of the United States is known for its racism, of course, as well.
Yeah.
But Atlanta, Georgia, is a different climate. It's a different thought process, and for the most part, racism is alive and well anywhere in the world. But in Atlanta, African American people thrive. You know, you can go into a doctor's office and look like the person that's there, or go in a
Yeah.
grocery store and see people like you and things like that for the most part. So that's why I came this way. Well, not why I came this way, but it was more acceptable for me to come this way. You know,
Yeah.
I came here because I have family here and I've got friends that I grew up with, grade school and high school. There's about a dozen of us that we get together. We dreamed together when we were kids. We prayed together. We talked about what we're going to become. And now we're grandparents and we're still together talking about what we're doing.
No,
So,
that's what you call being blessed.
really, man, honestly, absolutely. So,
You know, I moved to the States in 92 to go to college and I worked. So I was in the States for 10 years. My
okay.
fam uncle was in he was a doctor in Selma, Alabama. I don't know if you know Selma, Alabama.
Yes, I am very familiar with it.
Yeah, so I lived out in Selma But then
Okay.
I went to college in Milwaukee, and it was night and day because
Yes.
in Selma, when I moved there in '92, the mayor of Selma was still the same mayor that said that when Martin says we're going to march from Selma to Montgomery,
Yeah.
he was still in office in '92 when I
Oh
was
God.
into town. But I never felt more at home in a place in America than when I was in the South, because I felt that sense of if we didn't like you, you would know about it. But if they liked you, there was the Southern hospitality. I think, Milwaukee and Michigan, the borders, and very
Yes.
similar.
Yes, they are.
I felt that distinct sense of you're not welcome more so in Milwaukee than any other part of America. And I lived in California for 5 years. And so when you speak about Grand Rapids, I can like, wow, I didn't
Yeah.
think it was still happening. Um,
It
but
is
then
alive and well still. Yes.
how did you then, growing up with your large family around you, how did you then, were you aware of how things were and determined to rise above it, or does it have a hold on you growing up?
Well, you know something, it was an intricate part of my growing up, the racism. It was, there are certain lines you just don't cross and you deal with it because it's a part of what you've got to deal with, period. I didn't really acknowledge the extent of how racist Grand Rapids was until I moved to California and I found a lot of people, that life was just different than that. Although again, racism's in America, but it was not so overt
Mm,
and it was not so intense.
mm,
And plus, me being in entertainment, there was a certain level of acceptance above and
mm.
beyond, other occupations.
Okay.
So I acknowledged it when I went back and visited, and I saw what my family and my friends were still dealing with. That's when it had the greatest impact on me. That I could never live a life like that again.
Wow. Growing up, when you had family singing as you did, where did the desire, the dream to take it a step further become something that you thought about instead of just singing as our family does and do local performances? Like, when did that sense of I want to
Okay.
actually?
Well, none of them ever did it professionally, other than my dad played in clubs and stuff like that. In fact, he actually played with Al Green, among a few others, notable jazz artists and stuff like that. But the rest of the family did not pursue it as a career. It was just something that they did.
Mm,
Okay. But from age 6, I proclaimed that I was going to be an entertainer, period. I just knew it. And so all of my steps led me in that direction. And then everything that I did reinforced
mm.
where I was going. So I didn't know no different. I didn't know no better. I just knew this is what I'm doing and I'll keep going. And the influences remained throughout that time.
You said about 180 miles from Detroit?
186.
100, to be specific, 186. So in 186 miles away, you had the Black Mecca of music. How did that influence you, Motown? And I'm referring to Motown before they moved to California. But how did that influence you locally, seeing this label producing people just like yourself making hit records around the world?
Well, you know what? It let me know that I could do it. Because we didn't have these kind of outlets in Grand Rapids at all. As I said, it was a racist town. There was very little black, but there was no black radio.
Wow.
So it was like, again, it had to be piped in, but fortunately, some clasp on to the music. For example, Al Green's from Grand Rapids, not
Oh,
born there, but raised there. Okay. And the guys that he worked with, he cut his first record in Grand Rapids. So that kind of inspired me as well. But to know that Motown was over there, and I actually went over for a Motown audition and wound up waiting in the car all night and going back home, in the course of it. Uh,
why was that?
well, the person that had us come, which was actually a saxophonist with what came to be, what do they call themselves? The musicians of Motown, the Funk Brothers, they call themselves.
Yeah.
He played with them. And his nephew told him about a group I was in, which was with my uncle and my cousin and another friend. And they supposedly set up an audition. Well, we get over there and the place is closed. And we sit in the car. And then when finally they opened and someone said that we're here, they had never heard of us. So it was just an ugly situation, to tell you the truth. But that's as close as I came to recording in Motown until years later,
Yeah, no,
unbeknownst, I meet Jermaine Jackson and the rest of it happens.
yeah, no,
So,
we'll get there. And so, I guess for high school and stuff, are you mainly playing trumpet? Are you singing? I mean, how
yeah,
you?
the group I was telling you about with my cousin and my uncle and our friend was a singing and stepping group, a la Four Tops, Temptations kind of thing.
Okay.
That's what we were doing. But the fact that I played trumpet and the fact that my uncle also, who was 3 years older than me, 4 years older than me, played trumpet, we decided we're going to put a band together. We won a couple talent shows just singing and stepping. And we decided, well, we should have our own band. So we put a band around us, and he and I picked up our horns and became a part of the band as well as everything else.
So when did things change then, after that band, did it seem like, we're winning talent shows, but we're not going to get any further, or what was the shift?
Oh, no, that group, believe it or not, I just outgrew them.
Oh.
I was a sought out, besides playing in that group, when nothing was happening with that group, I would take my little horn and go down to the jam sessions where everybody else was at. And so I became a sought out musician in the Midwestern area, in Michigan more so than anything. But I was sought out. So somebody would say, "Are you playing this weekend?" I'd say, "No." "Well, come play with us." And I would go play with them and things like that. So I was always playing. I was either playing the trumpet or I was singing. And, it was a constant with me.
Yeah. How were your parents? What were their thoughts when did you didn't say I'm going to go to college and stuff? They were they were like, okay,
Okay,
Gregory's.
well, let me share this with you. First and foremost, my dad was adjacent to my life. He was not an immediate part of my life. So I was raised by my single mother.
Wow.
So my dad did not have a voice in my music one way or the other than to tell me to tell the lady I wanted to play clarinet on one of them random visits we had, okay?
Okay.
But other than that, he had no voice in that. And of course, my mom, nobody around us immediately had gone into entertainment as a profession, as a vocation, as a job. None of us had. So they were inexperienced and they didn't know. I think a lot of them thought I was barking up a wrong tree. I remember having a discussion with my mother, I was 17 years old, and I'm out of school, and she's telling me it's time to get a job. And I was making money while I was playing with the bands, and I was actually giving her some, but it wasn't as much as a regular job would have had me. It wasn't as frequent, but just the same, she was telling me, "Greg, it's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet and get a job," and things like that. And I said, "Mom, I'm a musician. I'm going to be a musician my whole life." I said, "I will die to do this." Wow. Well, actually, I had to wind up leaving my mother's house. Fortunately, my grandmother took me in. And yeah, she only lived a few blocks away from my mom anyway. And she said, "Come over here and stay with us and go do what you got to do." So she had my support. This was only for the last couple of years before I actually got up and got out of Grand Rapids anyway. Wow. Ironically, though, it was always in me too to get an education. So I went to college. Oh. I was in my sophomore year of college when I got an invitation to play with the band and leave Grand Rapids and play with a band that was about to be managed by Barry White. So, and this was in 1972. So I joined that band. That's when I left college. I was in my sophomore year, and I flew to Phoenix, Arizona, and became a part of that band. And Barry White did do what he said. He brought us to LA, and he signed us to his production company, and then signed us to RCA Records. Okay. And the name of that band, that was White Heat. In fact, I don't know if you see the album covers, but White Heat is on the end over here. Wow. Of the album. So we put one album out in that situation with that, and broke up a year later.
Okay. I'm going to go.
I know we'll get to that.
No. But this was really good, and I guess you have been in college. That's a gamble to say I'm going to drop college and pursue this. What did you just feel that was too good to turn down, and then to say goodbye to college?
Oh man, first and foremost, I'm a musician. Period. An opportunity to play my horn, rather than sit down here and read this book, I'm playing my horn. It's just that simple. So it wasn't even a question. Not that I would have walked away from college to play with one of these local bands because I was committed. But keeping in mind, while I'm in college, every weekend I'm playing with the local bands anyway. Okay? But the thing of it is, here's an opportunity for my career to become for real, for me to become a professional paid musician and have a record out and things like that. Of course I'm going. And I'll add this tidbit, and we can get into that later too. This group, the White Heat, it was TNT Flashes, they asked me to come. And I told them I would come under one condition, and that was if I can bring my protege, my little brother, Bobby DeBarge. And they made room for it. And so, but I had to get his plane ticket. So I wound up talking to people. We wound up getting his plane ticket. And he and I flew out to Phoenix, Arizona to join this band.
Oh, so, okay. So actually, I didn't realize, when did you, I interviewed Elle, and they did say that they moved from Detroit to Grant because to their uncle's place. Is that where you met them, or when did you?
Yeah, I was about 14 years old. I met him at school. Bunny and I went to the same school, same high school, Ottawa Hills High School. So I met Bunny first. And then maybe a year after knowing Bunny, there was a choir in school. And I wasn't part of the choir, but I used to go and visit them from time to time. And strangely enough, so did Bunny's younger brother, Bobby. So after class was over, he and I would wind up sitting at the piano, and we became besties. So I became a big brother in that household because I was there all the time. I mean, we were close for at least 2 or 3 years before we started playing music as a band together. Well, maybe a couple years. Maybe a couple years. But Bobby and I used to play together and hang together a lot. He was like a little brother to me. He's about 1.5 years, 2 years younger than me. And he was withdrawn and he was shy, and I'm extroverted and out there. So I'd take him and we'd hang. I was impressed with him from the very beginning, though. And he was me. So we got close.
I mean, Elle talked about, because they were mixed race, they suffered abuse, both from the black side and the white side. How, from your recollection, I mean, was it a challenge for them being mixed race in Grand Rapids back in that days when they first moved?
Absolutely, man. In fact, I shared stuff about that in my book as well, because I used to hurt with them and for them as how they were treated, because they weren't black enough to be black or white enough to be white. So they were just out there and isolated. Fortunately, they were an attractive family. Fortunately, they could sing. And fortunately, more important than that, they had each other. There was enough of them to, so they would not be so injured by the external treatment that they were getting. But yeah, they were not treated good. Overall, they weren't.
So,
and not to mention the inner strife in their family and the conditions that that prevailed there, with the father being white and being abusive and the mom being black, and so it was something special.
And I'm wondering then, because you started off speaking about what it was like being black in Grand Rapids, and what you sort of experienced, and then now we're seeing a group, the Barge family, experiencing from both sides. I mean, I guess you could empathize but it must be hard to try and figure out, well, we're also being discriminative to these guys as well. I mean, that's a sort of a weird dynamic if we're being racially abused by the white people, and then having these guys almost being almost the lowest of the lowest. Or was it like that?
It was to that extent almost.
Wow.
But again, the beauty of it is they had each other. We all had music, and so we didn't let it beat us down as much.
Yeah.
We knew it was there, and we stayed as much away from it as possible. And I say we, because as I said, we were very close. From the time we met, we were very close. And, that wasn't going to bother us or hold us down. And me being determined to get us out of Grand Rapids, that's what I did. I got us all the heck out of there and into the business.
So this time, so you get the call to join. Why did you decide to get to bring Bobby with you? I mean, I mean that's such a, I'm surprised that you
For
would have just
one,
said, yeah.
no, for one, because I cared about him. He was my little brother. For two, is because he was withdrawn to an extent, and I knew that he would never get out of there if I didn't take him when I had the opportunity. And the drug influence was heavy because of all the mental and emotional strife they had to deal with individually and collectively. And I just couldn't leave him to become a victim of the streets or a victim of that bad life. I couldn't do that. And I felt strong enough. At that point, like I said, I was a sought out trumpet player. So I knew that opportunities were coming for me. Plus, I was determined to do it.
Mm.
So I figured I had a little leverage in the fact that they sought me out. So let me bring him with us. And just as after we got to Motown, it was I who initiated bringing DeBarge, the rest of them, to the label.
Oh yeah, no, we'll get to. So you bring Bobby with you. Did you bring him to sing or to
Well,
what
he
was
was a
the?
keyboard player too. I
Oh,
was
okay,
playing trumpet and singing. He was playing keyboard and singing.
okay,
And the
okay,
band was a self-contained band, so we both fit right in.
yeah. So what was it like then? The two of you knowing each other, coming to join the other guys in YT, and then also with Barry. What was that creative process like?
Well, it was new. It was different. We could consider it competitive to a degree because everybody had something to contribute to the new group and all of that. But Bobby and I did just kind of come through a little better than, some of the others. And for example, we had one, I actually co-wrote two songs on the album, and Bobby wrote one song on the album. And, once our voices were heard, and I'm referring to our musical and vocal
Mm.
were heard, then we were accepted. And we were just a part of whatever was happening at that point.
What, what was it like meeting Barry White for the first time?
Now that was a trip. It was late at night, man. It was, well, not late at night. It might have been 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when we drove from Phoenix, Arizona. When Barry finally told us to come on up, we drove overnight in a van and a car from Phoenix, Arizona, maybe about 5-6 hour drive, I think, something like that. Anyway, and we met Barry at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So half sleep, not clean. We meet this guy and they throw these contracts on the table for us to sign. Barry was a bear of a person. He was not standoffish, but he didn't have a hell of a lot to say that first night. And he didn't have a hell of a lot to say, period, throughout to those that didn't speak up. But I did. I always did. But it was a pleasure to meet the guy on one level, but to sign with him, it was like, okay, for example, my first words to Barry White after listening to him and going through this night and all of this, and they didn't put these contracts on the table. My first words to Barry White after hi, of course, hi, Mr. White, is are we allowed to get an attorney to sign these contracts? And Barry's response to me was an immediate gruff sign the MF. And that was the whole conversation. It was probably weeks later before we actually talked and got any kind of communication going with each other.
Wow.
So
it was very much business.
yes, straight ahead business. Yes, it was.
Wow. I mean, how much, because I know you're passionate about getting into the industry, but did you have a sense of the business side from those early days, or was it just about the musicianship and
You know what? I had a sense without the knowledge, if you can understand that. I knew when something did not make sense. And signing my name on a piece of paper that I don't know nothing about without somebody to represent me does not make sense. But I didn't have the knowledge. And when he said sign the thing, everybody else scrambled to sign. My instinct knew if you don't sign, you got to go.
Yeah.
So I signed. I was mad with myself for signing it on one level, on one side, but I realized, Greg, this is your opportunity to move forward. So from that point on, you know what I did, man? I was mad at me enough to start going into libraries and reading books so I could learn how to read contracts and different things about them. From that day to this, man, I can read and write contracts backwards and forwards.
Wow.
I mean, I do. I negotiate them. I've negotiated them over the years since then. You know, even when I got my Motown contracts, I was able to sit with my attorney and him explain to me what was going on to the point where I would get it so I could help make the decisions what was going to work and what wasn't going to work.
But you, I guess that short-lived deal with Barry, it was a good, but a bad way, good experience to say, okay, when the
You know
main
what,
one
man?
comes.
You know how I'm able to, let's say, justify that if you go to college, it costs.
Mm.
You have to pay for your education anywhere it goes. That was part of the cost I paid to become who I became in the record industry. So I was able to write that off and put that aside and say, thank God for the experience, because not only did I learn how to read and write contracts, I learned how to stand up for myself a whole lot better. I learned what should be accessible to me as a recording artist, as a writer, as a producer, as an arranger, and what I should not accept. And so it was part of my education. And I would pay for it in that same way again if it came up again, in hindsight.
When you guys were recording with Barry, then does he get involved in the studio? Is he involved in that process with you guys?
Yeah, actually, he produced one song and he came in our sessions quite a few times and hung out and may have had a suggestion here or there. So we did work directly with him. Not totally. There was another guy by the name of Bob Relf, who was the primary producer. He actually came to Phoenix, Arizona, and worked with us in preparation for us going to California, meet Barry White and doing the whole thing.
Okay.
In fact, Bob Relf was part of a team back in the 60s called Bob and Earl. Their big record, number one record, was Harlem Shuffle.
Wow.
And as I said, Bob Relf was a part of that team. And then later years, he became a producer and he wound up being our producer and teaching us a lot, because he was really, that was my first professional record was with them. So I learned a lot through Bob as well.
And he was open to sharing. He wasn't while producing you guys. He was open
Yeah,
to
he was.
sharing. Yeah.
He was workable until the bottle was empty. When the bottle was empty, he was hell to deal with because he was an alcoholic and he drank all day. So when we caught him sober, you can have a good conversation with him. But as the day went on, it was all about the music and not that the music and that bottle and nothing else. Okay.
Yeah. So when I moved to the States, the one thing I was afraid of ever doing was drinking coffee, because I seen it in so many films that everyone gets addicted to coffee. So I was afraid of coffee, and I never drank coffee. And I wondered, for you, going in those early days, seeing the situation with Barry and the contract, and seeing the producer, did you get a sense of, wow, this is this what I need to avoid in order to have longevity, keep away from the drugs and the drinks, and having a sort of a kind of moral side to you? Or did you see it in that way in those early days?
No, man. I mean, the truth of the matter, man, I was just so happy doing music. Everything came along with it. It was all a part of it. I went down the drug road too. I'm not ashamed to admit I went down the drug road and
Yeah.
actually got addicted. Me, Bobby, and Tommy of the Switch were pretty much addicted to drugs for a little while. I got out after maybe about 3 years, fortunately, after deciding that this is not who I am. My family would not like me being this guy because I didn't grow up with alcoholics and drug addicts. So I didn't have that kind of influence in my household. But it was very much a part of the music industry. And it's like going out in the rain. You go out in the rain, you're going to get wet. It's just as simple. And that's what we all did.
Yeah. The apart from the situation with the contract, and then you produce the first album, and it gets released. Do are you calling your mom? Okay, we've got an album out, and this is. I mean, what was how did you
The
translate the
funny thing
excitement?
about it, man, funny thing about it is we got there in 1973. Okay, the album process was long and slow. We stayed in LA a year and a half, roughly,
Wow.
recording that record. Okay, and then after we finished the record, we were going to go on tour. And the group that I was with was a group called TNT Flashers. They were out of Steubenville, Ohio. So they already had a Midwestern audience. And the thing was, is us going on tour, we needed that audience. So we relocated from California back to Akron, Ohio.
Oh.
Okay. But me, Bobby, and the guy that actually called me and got me in the group, Darnell Wyrick, were all from Grand Rapids. So first thing they did, once we finished the record, maybe a month or so after we were sure it was done, they flew us all back to our hometowns.
Okay.
We spent maybe 3 weeks to a month in our hometowns, and then we moved into a house in Akron, Ohio. And that was our base. And of that band and our roadie crew, there was 13 of us in one house.
Wow.
And that's where we lived, and that's where we rehearsed, and that's where we would go do our individual dates from, live performances.
Okay.
So when that record came out, I was in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And I had got one copy. They sent us all one copy of the darn album. So, of course, I showed my family and friends and all of that and told them to buy it and all of that thing. Yeah.
Wow. Who was prouder, grandma or mom?
I think they all were, to tell you the truth. I think they all were. Yeah. And my grandmother, that was something special, though. You know, because she said, I knew you could. I knew you would. And I did.
Yeah.
So I don't even think that made them as proud as Switch, which we can get into as we go. But they were proud that I had done what I said I was going to do, period.
Yeah. I mean, you had RCA backing you. What do you think went wrong that you just had that one release before the group disbanded?
There was some tension between the record label and Barry White's company. And RCA did not promote that record. They put it out, but the promotion on it, we never saw any real promotion on the record. So how the hell does the record sell if nobody promotes it? Folks can't buy it if they don't know it's there. So, and before we could get to a second album, Barry ended his relationship with RCA. He had options all over the place anyway. He's got himself, he's got Love Unlimited Orchestra, and he's got White Heat and 4 other acts signed. So he could move us around and put us in different places, but he actually dropped White Heat. And he took the name back since it was his name, and he stole our bass player. So,
what didn't he like about what you guys were doing that he just decided to just disband you guys?
I don't think it had anything to do with what we were doing. I really think it had to do with he had no place to place us right away. After the deal fell apart with RCA, he had no place to take us. And I think he had too much on his darn plate. He was already, again, successful with Love Unlimited Orchestra, and his own career. You know, that's when I learned to don't be managed by an artist because it's a conflict. And then the funny thing about it, years later, I became a manager. But fortunately, during the majority of my management period, I was not chasing being an artist. I managed SWV, I managed L. DeBarge, I managed Chico's Career, I managed a lot of rap acts, the Skinny Boys, Steezo, over the years. But I wasn't trying to be an artist. When I finally decided I was going back and put Switch back together, I got out of it. L. DeBarge was the last act that I managed full time.
Okay. So I mean, we'll get there. So that was that a blessing in disguise that he dropped you guys? At the time, was it hard to take, or what? How did you see it?
Sure it was. Sure it was hard. I mean, you know, fellas were kind of broken. In fact, to tell you the truth, it took a few months, but after that, that broke up the band. The only person that stayed where the band was living was me. I refused to go back to Grand Rapids. Yeah, but it broke. Bobby DeBarge was the first one to go home. He went back to Grand Rapids. Then the other guys kind of trickled away to their hometowns and different things, you know, because it was very discouraging. You know, you got a record deal, you got a situation that's supposed to be happening, and all of a sudden the floor gets pulled out from under you. And he steals your bass player, and he steals your name so you can't use it to go out and work. So yeah, it was very discouraging to most of them. But to me, it just fortified me. I was not going home. I'm going to the next place. Whatever the next place is, I'm going to do. So what I wound up doing, man, was getting out, making myself known in Akron, Ohio, and I started playing with different bands there. Determined to move forward.
Yeah. Just before we ask about how you formed Switch, was the bass player, was he really good?
Oh, yeah, he was incredible. Barry stole him, he kept him. His name was Vince Jefferson, and yes, he was really good. He was really good.
Okay. So how did you then start to form Switch then?
After being in Akron for a while and playing with all these local bands, I realized, okay, I had one record deal, I can get another one. And I had a friend who actually wanted me to, I befriended him in Hollywood, in California, a German guy. And he went back to Germany after we went back to California. But he loved music. I mean, he's a friend of Ringo Starrs and Little Richards and Johnny Guitar Watsons and other people. Anyway, he was a CPA, and he had a relationship with the Pall Mall Cigarette Company, and he got them to invest in an artist that he liked. And he and I stayed in touch. We'd write each other. So, and then we talk on the phone from time to time. And he told me that he had an act that he wanted me to produce because he heard what I'd been doing and, other stuff. And he wanted me to produce this act. I said, well, Vern, actually, I'm trying to put my own group together. Do you think you can get enough money for me to cut a demo? Took a couple months, but he came back and told me he had $8,000 for me and that he was going to manage the group. So he flew from Germany to Grand Rapids, picked me up, and we flew to Akron, Ohio, put the band together, went to Mansfield, Ohio, and started rehearsing. And we cut a demo in about 2-3 weeks.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think was $8,000 a lot of money back then?
A lot of money back then.
Okay,
Although the truth of the matter, it didn't really pay for the darn recording, But I'll get to that part of the story because there's some steps to that. Okay. So we'll get back to that one. But no, it was a lot of money. It was enough to get me started, but not enough to complete the task. Let's say that.
Okay, but I think we hear a lot about relationships and connections to really get through the door. What was it that sparked the connection, the friendship in your brief stay in music that he was able to come back and support you?
Oh, we used to hang out all the time. Like I said, he's a German guy, but he loved blacks and he loved black music. And because we were a band, we embraced him. We met him and we embraced him. So he used to come to our rehearsals. He used to come and hang with us. We lived in this hotel apartments kind of place. And he would come and hang with us most nights because he didn't have a whole lot of people in Hollywood that he wanted to deal with. And he wanted to be around the music. So he was with us pretty much for a good year.
Wow. Okay.
And so and he and I wound up being closer than he and any of the rest of them. So that cemented a relationship.
Okay.
It's so much so, like I said, that we would write each other and stay in touch with each other.
Wow.
He went back to Germany and I went to Ohio, but we stayed in touch with each other. And when the opportunity came, the first person he thought he wanted to work with was me.
So he said he was going to manage. Did he know anything about the industry?
Yeah, well, he knew, he'd been around it. Let's say that. And he's a CPA, so he knows structures and numbers and things like that. Enough where he went and got me the $8,500, like that. And he had relationships. Like I said, him and Little Richard were friends.
Wow.
Johnny Guitar Watson were friends. Him and Paul.
You said Ringo Starr?
Yeah, I said Ringo, but McCartney.
Oh, Paul McCartney. Okay.
McCartney. Him and Paul were friends.
Wow.
And some other people. So he'd been around the business and he thought he knew how to manage and all of that.
Okay.
And I'm knowing that, at least he's structured, he's disciplined, and he's honest. So yeah, maybe he can manage the group. Well, to be honest with you, that part of him managing the group lasted roughly 2 weeks.
Why is that?
Once we got under the same roof, I realized that his priorities were screwed up. My priorities were my band and getting this stuff off the ground. And his priorities were a bit different. And he spent money on things that I didn't think, out of that $8,500, he spent money on things that I thought were wrong. Now, we did wind up buying a used van. We wound up renting a house. We got musical equipment. we bought food and things like that, but money was dwindling. I wanted the money to go to the project solely, and he had other ideas, crazy things like buying weed and stuff like that. And come on, come on, man.
Okay.
So he and I bumped heads. I mean, and I had to fire him. I wrote out a handwritten contract, and I wound up giving him, for the $8,500, I wound up giving him access to demos that White Heat had cut and couldn't afford to get out of the studio. So he took the money, bought the demos, and then went on back to Germany. And me and Jody Sims wound up getting enough money to at least finish what we had started and get to California.
Okay. So, okay, but you didn't talk about how you got the group, the core members of both Phil,
Okay,
Tommy, Eddie, and Jody.
Well, let me tell you this. When Burns told me that he could get the money, he told me that he had gotten the money for the demo, then it was time for me to put musicians together. Okay, I had met Philip Ingram while I was there in Akron. And he was talented, good looking, and a nice guy, with a humble guy. That was very important to me. So I asked him, did he want to be in my band when I was going to put this band together? And he said yes. So he brought Eddie Fluellen to my attention. Tommy DeBarge, as I said, I'm part of the DeBarge family. So Tommy being a bass player, and that's my little brother, yeah, I want him in the band. Okay. And Jody Sims was a member of White Heat. Okay. So I had handpicked all these who brought me Eddie, then Tommy DeBarge. We Clark, and I put everybody together, and we got together to cut this demo. Now there was a drummer out of Akron, Ohio, a young cat that I wanted, but his mom died while we were waiting for the money to come, and he had to step up and become head of household, so he couldn't be the drummer. So that led me to go back to Jody Sims, who was with White Heat, and ask him, and I knew he was close enough in Youngstown, and so I asked him, did he want to join, and he joined us as well. Okay, there was another guy that after Bobby left White Heat, this guy came in as our keyboard player, vocalist as well. His name was Arnie Hayes. So Arnie, I told him when I put this band together, you're going to join us, and he wanted to join us. So Arnie was going to join. Arnie joined us. So I had Arnie, I had Tommy DeBarge, I had Melvin Clark, I had Philip Ingram, and I had Ellie Fluellen, and I had a band, and Jody Sims on drums, and I had a full band. And that's who went to Mansfield to cut this demo. When the demo was cut, Burns was gone. Couple of Jody's girlfriends got us tickets. We knew we needed to go to California to shop the deal. We didn't know nobody, but we would go to California to shop the deal. So Jody got his girlfriends, different girlfriends, to buy us airplane tickets. And ironically, both of them bought 2 first-class tickets.
Wow.
One bought one for him, the other one bought one for me. So we flew first class back to California. But bear in mind this, though. We ran out of money trying to get that demo cut. So we only had 1 cassette tape. They gave us one to go shop the deal. And once we got the deal, we was going to give them the rest of the money for the rest of the recording. But they'd only give us 1 tape. So the thing is we're out here, we go to Hollywood with 1 tape, and anybody that we talked to had to listen to that tape with us. We didn't have one we could give to nobody. They had to listen to it with us. That's unheard of. It's the craziest thing in the world. You got to give folks your demo tape.
Yeah.
Ironically, Jody and I walked into RCA Records. We got there the second day we were there. We walked into RCA Records.
Your former label. My
former label. The president, we asked to see him since we knew who he was. And he remembered us from White Heat. And he was clear. His schedule was clear. So he allowed us to come up, and we got to talking, and he listened to the demo, and he didn't like it. He said, but you're welcome to come back when you got something else. But, of course, he passed on it. And he's also the one that explained to us what happened with the Barry White situation. Because he said they had given Barry a lot of money for us, but Barry chose to do something different with it, and that's why the whole thing fell apart. So anyway, point being, we still had that 1 tape, Fortunately, he, the president of RCA, Don Berkheimer, listened to that tape with us. After that, we were already upset that he didn't hear it. We were also upset that he had told us some things about the Barry White situation where we wanted to sue Barry White. And we knew of this lawyer up in this building a couple blocks away. So we're going to go see this lawyer if he can help us sue Barry White. Me and Jody. We get with the lawyer. He lets us in. We're talking, and he says, yeah, well, okay. Maybe I may be able to help you guys. Show me the contract. Well, we don't have no contracts. You don't have the contracts. Well, how do I know what your deal was? I won't know what your deal was. Tell you what, you guys have to come back when you got your contract. There's nothing I can do for you now. Okay. So we walk out of his office. Keep this in mind. He's in this building, which we later found out was the Motown building. We didn't know it then. Okay. We walk out the 20th floor. Now we're madder because we've got rejected by Berkheimer, found out the scoop on Barry White. This guy can't help us. We're mad and we're discouraged, and we get on the elevator and we're getting ready to go back to where we're staying. Rode down 2 floors, and who gets on the elevator but Jermaine Jackson and his wife, Hazel Gordy Jackson, Barry Gordy's daughter. Now, there are other people in the elevator. So they're on one side of the elevator, and Jody and I on the other side, and we nod and acknowledge each other.
You knew him?
We're the only blacks on the elevator. Okay. So we nod and acknowledge each other, and we go all the way down to the 5th floor, which is where they get off. Once they got off, me and Jody talking while we got to go to 4th floor, 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. We should have gave them the tape. So by the time we get to the 1st floor, we decided that we're going to go back up and try to find them. We go back up, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, people getting on, people getting off. Get to the 5th floor. We know, of course, where they got off at. And go in and run down this long corridor, man. It seemed like it was an endless corridor. Strangely enough, and they should have been gone because this took about 10, 15 minutes. They should have been gone. We get to the end of the corridor. There's an entrance to the outside. Sitting right there in a brown Rolls Royce is Jermaine and Hazel. Ironically, they saw us coming and rolled down the window. We all smiled, and, I stuttered a little. They stuttered a little. Jermaine stuttered. But anyway, they were looking for a cassette to play. We gave them our only tape. It was over, man. We were out of business. But he said he'd give it a listen. In less than 24 hours, Jermaine called us. We gave him the tape and a phone number where we were.
Okay.
In less than 24 hours, Jermaine called us and said, I like your tape. What do you want? Well, we want a deal. Of course. He says, well, right now I'm at the hospital with Hazel, but maybe we can meet. And then he decided, he said, hey, it's in Hollywood. If you guys are in Hollywood, maybe you can come over here and hang out with me and we can talk. Well, we got on the bus and went exactly where he was. Now, here is an amazing story, man. Let me tell you this, Nnamdi. We're there talking to Jermaine. We're hanging with him. Hazel's in labor. And we're talking to Jermaine. We're talking to Jermaine in the waiting room for a good hour. Maybe an hour, 15 minutes pass. And then who should walk in but Mrs. Jackson, LaToya, Reby, and Janet. Jermaine introduces us to his family. They welcome us like family. We all get to talking and hanging for another half hour, 45 minutes. Then who should walk in that door but Michael, Randy, Marlon, and Jackie. So we're surrounded by the Jacksons, and they're treating us so we meet everybody, and they're treating us like family. But and Hazel's still in there in labor having a baby. So after a while, though, we realized, let's get out of the way. So me and Jody left. We explained to him, and he says, okay. He said, I like it, so I'll help you guys. And we started hanging out from that day forward. And he got us a deal. We had a deal that was in February, and by May we signed contracts.
Was it surreal? I guess it must have been surreal seeing Jermaine, but then you're seeing the rest of the Jacksons. Does it become real, or are you just like, yeah?
It's never become real. It's still surreal. It really is. Come on, man. That's some fantasy stuff. You know that? To meet some dude in an elevator, you only got one tape, and then to meet the Jacksons, the most talented family in the world. Come on, man. The whole damn thing's surreal. I'm still amazed. I'm still in awe.
Yeah.
That God saw fit to put me in that position.
because that's the stuff that happens in movies. That's a movie that you write it, the one tape in the same building, and yeah, I know you got the book. We got the book switched
That's
to
right.
March Motown. We said, well, we're going to talk about where people can get the book, but it does
Yeah,
sound like a film, and hopefully they can see fit to get you
I've got.
a,
I'm talking to a couple of people about movies now on it. So
yeah, because that's just amazing, just actually that environment. But one of the things I wanted to find out though, was it because
sorry about that.
that's fine. Was it because you said you in the elevator and you and Jody and Jermaine and Hayes were the only black? Was there a sense of because it almost felt as if you're one of us, so we're just gonna welcome you in? The way they all embraced you without knowing who you were, but just like, okay,
Yeah,
we're from the Midwest, you're from the Midwest, we're gonna.
no, but we hadn't even gotten that far to even know that. It was just a, uh, an equivalent energy, I dare say. Yeah, it was just a positive energy that we all had that made us acknowledge each other and want to take it further.
Wow. The did you so did you not Barry didn't give you guys a copy of your contracts after you signed?
No, I mean, some of the guy, one of the guy. Oh, I don't remember if anybody had them. Tell you the truth.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they weren't about business. These guys were just musicians, man.
Yeah,
And I'm
but
just one of 13, and I'm one of the latecomers. So no, we did not get copies of those contracts.
okay. Yeah, but it didn't even in the 90s, they didn't change. Everyone just signed and just didn't and found out later on. So
That's right.
it hadn't changed. But so you and Jody, you were just like, okay, this did you guys pinch yourself to say we've just been given an opportunity by Jermaine? Did you think it was guaranteed until you, or did you think it was just a foot in the door, but we hope for the best? Or what was?
With reference to Barry White or with Motown.
No, no. So this is after Jermaine says, you left Jermaine and the family because his wife was giving birth. Did you guys
Right.
feel as if we've got this, or were you still like, well, we don't know how it could
Well, let me
go?
share this with you. And it's funny, but it's in my book as well. Before I left those guys in Akron, Ohio, because me and Jody flew in Mansfield, Ohio, me and Jody were the ones flying. MC, Tommy, Arnie, Eddie, they were going to stay behind. I told them that we would have a record deal in 2 weeks.
Wow.
How crazy is that? That was just my confidence. So when Jermaine did come and say, okay, then I'll work with you guys and I'll get you guys the deal. I mean, it was just what it was supposed to be because I had already claimed it, if you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
So it was just par for the course. It was just, okay, another step in me getting there. That's all it was. Yes, we had this. I'll tell you this, though, man. In picking my guys for my group, I had to have humble guys,
You said
logical
that.
guys. I
Yeah, you
couldn't
said
have
that.
egos and all that madness out there. They had to be true to what they were doing, and they had to be nice people because I don't deal with non-nice people. I just don't. So everybody was humble. So nobody was saying, I got this and all of that. Everybody was, thank you, all the way down the line. But I had a certain arrogance in my belief that I was going to make it. So much so that it was just given. It was automatic. I'm thankful. Don't get me wrong. But I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. You
Wow.
know, in retrospect now, at my age and me looking back at it all, God, man, was I blessed?
Yeah,
And am I thankful?
yeah.
Because it didn't have to be me. And I hear so many other people's stories and have watched so many come and go and come and go. But mine has been on course all the way down the line. But I dare say this too. My outlook has made a lot of this possible too. But because I never said die, but I never said, you owe me this,
Mhm.
or I got to have this, or I never took it for granted.
Mhm.
I've always been thankful for it. And I've always tried to give back because of it.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely important, and I think those are life lessons. You could have been like a You know, you could have taken advantage of others, but also, you know, I think when you're with a band, the importance of getting like-minded people, they can make or break the group and the vision and the dream, especially if they're not as hungry and as focused and as dedicated as you were at that time. How long did you guys stay in LA before you went back to get the guys?
Well, actually, no, we stayed. Motown bought bus tickets for the guys.
Oh,
Motown bought bus tickets, and we sent them bus tickets for them to come out to California.
oh,
And this part of the story is amazing too.
yeah.
I told you that Arnie, this guy Arnie, was the lead vocal, one of the lead vocalists in the group. So, but when it came time to send him a bus ticket, I tried to reach him as I reached the other guys to let them know that we got a deal with Motown. Arnie refused to come.
Oh.
He said, "I'm not going to come, Greg." I don't remember what his reason was, because all I really heard was, "I'm not going to come." And it just affected me in such a way. I was outdone, because now I got to try to figure out who's going to do this falsetto in this group, because I had a vision for this group, you know, a la Temptations, a la Four Tops, with the various lead vocalists. And Philip and I were baritone alto, so I needed the tenor voice. And I'm trying to think who. And of course, Bobby was my brother, and I loved him dearly, but Bobby was on drugs at the time. And that's why he wasn't an original member, because I could not let his drug addiction destroy my stuff before he got off the ground. I loved him dearly, man. And my plan was to come back and get him anyway. You know, get him cleaned up and get him anyway and help him get his own career off the ground, but not to add him and switch. But when Arnie refused to come, and I already got this deal on the table with Motown, I didn't have time to play and try to audition and get second guess. I had to go back to what I knew was, you know, would work for the sound of this group. And so I had a talk with Bobby, ironically, and I knew he was on drugs. And he said, "Greg, I'll quit. Get me out of here." He said, "I can't live like this. Get me out of here, please." And he pleaded with me. And I said, "Bobby, I can't let you destroy this group." He said, "I won't, man." Finally, Bobby agreed to come. He was strung out on heroin at the time. In fact, we let Motown send him the ticket, but we kept Motown away from us for a good week while he cold turkey, or shall I say, shuck his addiction. He was sick as a dog. He was throwing up all the time. He had sweats. His withdrawal was horrible. He withdrew on the bus. He was in withdrawal on the bus, which took 3 days to get from Grand Rapids to California. And then we had him locked up in a hotel room for 2-3 days, where myself, Jody, Tommy, and Melvin treated him and looked out for him and took care of him until he was able to stand and you know.
Wow.
And finally, you know, we let Jermaine and Hazel meet him, not them totally unaware of his drug addiction and all this other stuff. And we rehearsed for a showcase, because once Jermaine them decided to sign us, he wanted Barry and everybody else to see who we were and what we could do. So we rehearsed for a showcase, and we wound up doing the showcase and blew them away.
And by this time, Bobby was able to regain sing and
Yeah, Bobby was good after about a week. After being in California about a week, he was good. You know, we were able to rehearse and build and stuff like that. And we rehearsed and put ourselves together for about 3 weeks. You know, and we're ready to. Motown put us up in a hotel. In fact, we stayed in a hotel for a good 6-7 months on Motown's dime, until finally we moved out of the hotel in Hollywood to the San Fernando Valley in the LA area.
Can you imagine, just when you reflect on the turn of events when Artie decided not to join, that changed not just Bobby's life, but the whole DeBarge family's life. I mean, that's that moment in history. If he had just said, "Yeah, I'm coming down," DeBarge, we would never have heard of them, and it would just been a whole different story. But that's, you just think about faith and just how things could just switch.
Do you know how I view that whole situation? My life was preordained. It was predestined. It was, and so was Bobby's, and so was the DeBarges. And I happened to be utilized and become the vehicle to get us to the destination. I'm so thankful for it. I'm so humbled by it,
Mm.
you know. But the thing of it is Arnie was supposed to quit. He wasn't supposed to come. Bobby was supposed to be there. Look at the success of Switch. I'll be honest with you and tell you, I do not envision the level of success with Switch with Arnie versus Bobby. And Arnie was incredible. Falsetto singer, sing like maybe lead vocalist of Stylistics or Blue Magic or one of those guys. But he could sing, don't get me wrong. But Bobby DeBarge is a phenomenon. Bobby DeBarge, to me, is the definitive falsetto singer. But not only that, there was a lot of things about Bobby and Bobby's life that was supposed to take this journey with me. And I was just a vehicle.
Mm. Wow.
So I'm humbled by it all, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, we talk about destiny. I mean, you've, it's almost like every part of the journey, it's another sign that actually this was not a fluke. This was, you know, that's just amazing.
That's right. That's right.
What was it like seeing Barry Gordy for the first time, Mr.
I was blown
Motown?
away. I was blown away, to be honest with you. And the first time I saw Barry Gordy was at that showcase.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like God. Barry Gordy, Smokey Robinson, Suzanne DePass. You know, a lot of the major producers of Motown were at the showcase. There's probably about 20 or 30 people there. Iris Gordy, there was a lot of them there that we had heard of and known of, and they're there to see us. And at the end of it all, we blew them away. Now, let me tell you this part of that showcase, too. Okay, we get to California, me and Jody, and the group didn't have a name. But I told you, his girlfriends bought 2 first-class tickets for him and me. And we had drinks, free scotch. We had steak on the flight. That was my second flight, the third flight, to tell you the truth. So we were just in all first class. So when it came to coming up with a name, we decided to name the group First Class. Okay? Now, as we're preparing to do this showcase, Jermaine and Hazel, having the wherewithal to explore things, they checked it out and found out that there was a group in New Jersey that had recorded on some label by the name of First Class. So we had to get rid of that name. So we're still, the days and weeks are moving forward towards the showcase, and we're trying to think of a name, and all of us participated in trying to come up with a name for this group. And we could not come up with a name. Every time somebody come up with a name, that ain't gonna work. Mail that to Grand Rapids. So we don't really have a name, but we're doing this showcase. After the showcase, everybody that was there hung out with us. Well, there was hors d'oeuvres and other stuff. Hazel and them did it right. So after the showcase, Jermaine and Hazel, they served hors d'oeuvres, and everybody that was there came up to talk to us, to deal with us. In the course of it, Suzanne DePass, who was raving about how incredible we were, she said, "Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you. Everybody played more than one instrument, okay? Everybody played more than one instrument. Everybody sang. So in the middle of a song, Bobby, who may be up front on the mic, runs back to the keyboard, while Philip, who's on the percussion, may run up and start singing bass, while I might get off my piano and go play my trumpet. So we used to switch up and do things like that. Now, to the point, Suzanne DePass, in all of her compliments, she says, "I've never seen so much switching in my life." I said, "That's the name." And that's how we got our name.
Oh, so she did. I did hear about it, but I wasn't sure if it was true that she came up with the sort
Well,
of.
she didn't come up with the name Switch. She made a comment.
Yeah.
And I pulled that out of there to call us Switch. And from that point on, it kicked in. It worked because that's what we did. You know, and even when we performed, went on our first tour and stuff, those things were part of what we did. So that's where the name Switch came from.
Wow. Goodness.
But it started with Suzanne's comment. She didn't name the group, but it was with her comment.
With the comment. Wow. What do you think? I mean, apart from because this is Motown, they've got, and this, they've got all the big bands and everything. What was it different about what you guys did that they thought, okay, we can do something different with you compared to everyone else that we had?
Okay, well, the only other band that they had was Commodores.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so And as the music was just beginning to, the music scene was just evolving, slowly evolving into a self-contained acts, like with Sly and the Family Stone and Ohio Players, and but there wasn't the Beatles, but there wasn't a whole lot of self-contained acts. So we added to Motown's evolution as well, because they didn't have another band except
Okay.
us, okay, and them. So we added something special to their roster. Not to mention that not only were we a band, we were a band and a singing group, because I made sure everybody sang. I made sure me, Philip, and Bobby were the principal lead vocalists, with them even standing out more than me. But you'll hear me, I'm on every record singing something. But anyway, everybody sang. So we brought something that not only that Motown didn't have, but didn't nobody have. Nobody had an act like Switch. Not to mention, I didn't pick no ugly dudes. Everybody had to be handsome. But that's in my head. That didn't come out of my mouth, but that was in my head. Making my selection. And now on stage, I talk about it because, they said, well, why you say you had to have handsome dudes? I said, because girls don't scream for ugly dudes.
Oh goodness. But you do have to have a vision, because if you're already speaking it, you need to then you can't just stop again a record deal. You need to keep thinking bigger and bigger things. What was your expectation? Did you get to meet at that time Stevie and little and Diana
Yes,
Ross and
absolutely. And ironically, we were invited into their sessions, and I met Ross in mine. Berry Gordy brought her to one of my sessions. I was working on a song one time, and that's how I met her. Stevie came into one of us. Stevie came in on our session, and we were cutting I Call Your Name. Me, Bobby had written, arranged, and produced it, and it was kind of in the late stages of it. And it's ironic, man, because we're listening to the mixes and stuff, and Stevie's in there with us, and he's loving it. And he heard something, and we couldn't hear it. And he tried to point it out to us, and we couldn't hear it. So we just kind of dismissed it as if, okay, that's one of them Stevie things. We just got to let that go. The record goes out on the street. We hear it on the radio, and we're in the car, me and Bobby in the car. And we heard exactly what he was talking about. This was months later. We heard exactly what it was kind of a frequency thing, but you could hear it. Stevie heard it first. We didn't know. So anyway, it was amazing. It was amazing, man.
How did you not become starstruck? I mean, we talked about the Jacksons, but seeing all these, or were you just focused on the business, what we need to do? Or how did you not just get overwhelmed by seeing these people that you grew up idolizing as a kid?
Well, ironically, I never had an idol. I never idolized anybody. I just saw them as I saw me, to tell you the truth. Now, I had people that I respected and people that I was in awe of their talents, but not to the point of becoming fanatical about it, but acknowledging they just like me. And so even around Stevie and Diana and some of these big name folks and the Jackson Five, I was humbled to be in their presence on one level, but not to the point of not thinking that I'm right there with them. Because they do what I do. They just had greater opportunities before I got there.
And is that probably what made them feel as if, that felt comfortable, where you could relax because they didn't see this?
I would think so, man. I think they saw me more as a peer than a fan. And it kind of worked. And we could communicate and articulate and, and deal on any subjects at that point. I think that I was welcomed in. Plus, I was part of the Motown family, so they welcomed us in on that one anyway. Like Rick James and I became tight over the years and things like that. That's a whole other story.
When you're releasing the first album, did you note? Okay, well, let's talk about contracts then, because you've had the experience with Barry. How did you make sure this time around you weren't going to get played against and not be afraid of losing the opportunity if you didn't sign?
Because I got a recommendation from a few different people about this firm. The firm that handled Switch was called Cooper, Epstein, and Horowitz. Wow. And they were the Grammys law firm.
Wow.
So, and I was able to get introduced to the young up and coming attorney who agreed to take our account. And he and I would sit down and spend time with those contracts.
Wow.
I mean, any of the rest of the guys that wanted to participate could be involved. It was more so Jody and I that had voices in Switch, but I sat down with him because, like I told you, after Barry White, I learned how to read and write contracts.
Mm.
So Michael and I could have intelligent conversations about what's in this contract and what's not. For example, there's one big issue in the contract that was a deal break point for me. I was not going to let Motown own the name Switch. During that time frame, most record companies owned the names of the artists, whether it was black or white artists, it didn't matter. The record companies owned it. For example, if you remember when Prince became the artist formerly
Yeah,
known
yeah,
as,
yeah, yeah.
and that kind of thing, the record company owned his name. Well, I saw that in the contract and I was determined. I'm not giving them my name. I don't care. Now, keep in mind, I told you that Motown put us up in this hotel, so they're paying the bills and they're giving us a per diem every week. And we're still in negotiation. And I tell them, hell no, I'm not going to give you my name. So they shut off all communications at that point.
Wow.
So every day I'm sitting there waiting on the people from the front desk to tell me I got to get out because Motown ain't paying the bill. And I don't know where the hell I'm going or what I'm going to do because I got 5 other guys that are dependent on what we've got going now. And where we going to go, what we're going to do. We all the way out here in California, don't have money to get home. After a little more than 2 weeks,
2 weeks.
Motown finally came back. My attorney came back and said Motown contacted them and said that, okay, we'll let you have your name, but you have to give us all the publishing.
Oh.
Well, at the time, I didn't know the value of the publishing either. And I didn't know that Bobby and I were going to wind up writing the majority of the albums and the majority of the hits. So, not that I rushed and said right away. I learned what I could, and I said, well, okay, I got to give up something. Here's another year in college I got to pay for. So I pay for it with the publishing. And so the truth of the matter is I've owned the name since.
Okay.
I got my name where a lot of artists did not. I even, like the Temptations, had to give up all future royalties to get their name back and things like that. So.
Wow. But that meant that any song you guys wrote, they owned it, or
they owned the publishing on it, and they were the ones to make the deal. For example, right now too, and I'm kind of running short on time.
Yeah,
but
yes.
Anyway, but for example, right now, I don't know. Are you familiar with SZA? I know you know.
Yeah,
yeah. Are you familiar with her single with Kendrick?
Yes,
30 for 40?
Yes.
And so you're aware that that's "I Call Your Name"?
No, I didn't realize that they sampled that. No.
They sample "I Call Your Name." In fact, the whole intro is Bobby DeBarge speaking. Okay, they sample it. It's a hit. Over 100 million streams. It came out December 22nd. Bobby and I wrote it. Now, this record has been used quite a few times by quite a few artists, but never this big. When Rich Boy did it, I won't tell you the amount, but I made a few $100,000 when Rich Boy did it in 2006. Throw some D's. This record has already surpassed Rich Boy's audience by, I dare say, by 5 or 6 times. So I'm expecting a hell of a payday from this record. You know, once it gets where it's going, I'm expecting a hell of a payday, from this record. But the thing of it is this: had I owned the publishing, I could probably do some things that would be ridiculous. But because Motown owned the publishing, they get their share, I get a share of it.
Okay, so that you didn't just give up the whole rights to the song. It's just
no, I didn't give up my writers. I get my writers. They just get the publishing on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, when did things? And I know that you're pressed for time and everything, and I guess people would want to know when Bobby left, what was the breaking point that you thought that it just couldn't continue?
Bobby got back into his drugs after the first couple of years. See, I didn't go into a lot of Bobby's life prior to Switch, where a lot of damage was done. But at the hands of his father, Bobby was abused severely, mentally, physically, sexually, and otherwise. Mm-hmm. It did a lot of damage. That's what drove him to drugs in the first place. Okay, while we were on our quest, brand new to Motown, brand new to Switch and all of that, he could maintain and he could hold on. But with certain affirmations and confirmations that he was somebody and things like that, not only did he get back into his drugs and his exploration, but his behavior came really bad, man, really bad. And me being the leader of the group, I could not let him destroy my group. So he and I were at odds. That's my brother, and I love him. And outside of this business, we'll be okay, and I'll help you deal as best I can with what you're dealing with. But I'm not gonna let you destroy my group, Bobby. I'm just not gonna do it. So we got at odds, and around the third album, we were talking about breaking up. You know, fortunately, we had another 3 years left on the contract, and of course, Barry Gordy interceded and said, "I can't let you guys destroy this group. Y'all fix whatever needs to be fixed." And again, Bobby's my brother, and I love him. I always have. I always will. So, Bobby, we can do better than this for now, okay? So we did for a good year and a half. Then after that, we went out on the road, and the drugs was bad, and the exposure was bad, and people in his ear telling him, "You're switch and forget the rest of." And I'd had enough, and he'd had enough, and we went east and west. Wow. And then me and then Philip left. His brother James Ingram is the head over there.
Was that his brother? I didn't realize
that was his brother. Absolutely.
Oh, I love James.
Yeah. But Philip was successful before James, but James just okay. Well, when we left Motown, James quickly brought Philip over there to Quincy to Quest Records. So there was me, Jody, and then Tommy left to be with Bobby and his other siblings. So the only ones left were me, Jody, and Eddie. And I went and got us another deal at Total Experience Records. That's why the record, I don't know if you're familiar with Keeping Secrets, which is a huge record for us in the UK for years.
Yes. It's been, yes.
Yeah, that's when we cut that over there.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, I took the last three and we went on over to Total Experience. We cut one record and got out of that deal and then back down.
So, wow. Well, you know, I know that you have to go, but I want to see if it's possible for us to reschedule because I want to get into your career as a manager and then why you decided to reform Switch, but before we, so I'll communicate with you so we can set up another date for that. But in the end, before that, you've got a book called Switch, DeBarge, Motown and Me. Where can people get it, and what is it that you wrote? What can we expect from reading the book?
Well, okay, it's my autobiography, quite frankly, and it's the story of my young life. But even more important than that, it is the story of Switch up until we left Motown and broke up. In fact, I'm working on the second book, have been for a while, because it tells the story of what happened after we left Motown, after we broke up and left Motown. But yeah, the thing of this is it's all about my young years in the industry, who I was and the influences. And there's a lot in here about my relationship with Bobby DeBarge and what the story I was just telling you about what happened. It's in here. This book, it's on Amazon. I did a publishing deal through Amazon, but it's also on my website, which is www.switchentertainmentworld.com.
Okay.
And whomever goes there to get the book, if they ask for an autograph, a signed copy, I can do a signed copy. I can't do it with Amazon, but I can do it there. Okay. And again, that's www.switchentertainmentworld.com. It's there. Okay. And that's other stuff, other merchandise, the history of Switch, everything's there. You got to check it out for real.
Yeah, I'm going to put the link and post that so that people can be aware of that. But I think I know you covered just the bits and pieces, so I guess people buying the book will be able to get a full detail because, as I said, your journey sounds like a film, and you can in Hollywood they add stuff just to give a nice sweet ending. But I guess when you read the book, there's a lot more that we're going to listen to and be able to read it through that book. So it's going to be something I'm going to read.
In fact, I'll tell you this, and you can tell your audience: go on Amazon and check the reviews on this book. The reviews are amazing. There's at least 25 reviews on there. Mm-hmm. Check them out. I think they're pretty honest. I think they say a lot about it. But yeah, I was blessed to write a good book too. They call me a storyteller now. So, and you know what? And getting back to the point, let's just call this part A of the interview, and we'll do part B.
Yeah, no, definitely, because you can tell that I'm so fascinated by your life and your career. And that's why, and I know you're pressed for time, so I said, I'm gonna put a break to it now and be able to come reschedule because you spoke about being a manager and all the and coming back in to switch. So I want us to take a time with that. So
I like that. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And soon, man. And soon. We can pick it up whenever you want to pick it up.
Yeah, no, I'll send you a message just to see where you to get to when your dates are clear because I know that I told you when I was interviewing Tony, it starts off for 10, 20, 30 minutes and then because when you're speaking to somebody who has such a rich history, more questions keep coming in, so you don't even realize when it's an hour and a half down, 2 hours, three
Right.
hours. So
Right.
I realized you got a lot of phone calls saying where you at, where you at. So I'll give you the space to stop now, and offline I'll send you some emails to see what dates are great. But I'm gonna make sure that before this comes out, I'll put out the links where people can get the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd
Yes.
appreciate it. And yeah,
Okay.
man, hit me anytime. It doesn't matter. We'll pick it up and go from there.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, once we drop, I will send you a message just to find out some dates. I'll send you some dates to see which would be first to conclude where we stopped.
Absolutely, Nnamdi. Hey, man,
Yeah.
it's really been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, as I said, the book is the book is out. I will put the link for the Switch Entertainment World website as well as Amazon where people can get the book in anticipation for our follow-up interview.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to it.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much, sir.
Thanks so much, man. I look forward to hearing from you. We'll go from there.
We'll do, definitely.
All
And
right,
also I
man.
want to thank Norm for setting it up as well.
Absolutely. That's my buddy.
Yeah.
Good one.
Okay.
Okay, man. You take care. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of Halftime Chat. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment. But most importantly, why don't you become a member of Halftime Chat? We've got amazing videos, amazing perks, and being able to support the channel. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.
I never participated in that category.
And somewhere in between.
For even loving us, on which I didn't miss you with.
What was it like growing up?
She's still making an impact on 4 houses down.
I have a couple of pieces.
Trying to get this one and that one.
That works for you, but just for me,
No. Okay, you're okay.
They don't understand what Jonas boys are winning all spirits.
play it. I mean, I love all different genres.